Stay tuned for some outtakes. Welcome to Pitch It To Me podcast, a show about the subjective past, present, and potential future of Flesh and Blood design, where we make like a phoenix and fucking die, before coming back in a blaze of glory. In today's episode, we will analyze a curated selection of cards from the set Uprising. On red pitch, Joel looks over some power cards from Uprising's past. On yellow pitch, Clark tries to salvage the rupture keyword. And on blue pitch, Fuzzy poops the party by mentioning ice in 2025. You can find us across all socials such as Bluesky and Instagram at Pitch It To Me Podcast. I'm Jolie Joel.
I'm Clarky Clark.
And I'm Fuzzy Fuzzy.
Oh, it doesn't really work with that one.
You set me up for disaster.
Hello, audience. Welcome back. For this episode, we're trying out a new series called Pick a Card, where we're going to each pick a card or two from a previous set and talk about them in depth. It's kind of like an extended Arsenal zone. For today, we decided to do it on the set Uprising because we thought that's going to be interesting going into the next season with the release of The Hunted. Our goal was to find a way to discuss The Hunted without actually knowing all of the spoilers. We're recording this before the big spoiler week because of just how our schedules are lining up. So we don't have all the information you guys do, but hopefully we're able to keep things relevant by talking about cards that are going to be impactful for these heroes and play patterns.
Mm-hmm. That's the great tension on our podcast, is talking about things happening now, but 2 weeks in advance.
Mm-hmm. For reference, we just had the 3 daggers revealed for Syndra, Fang, and Arachne. Mm-hmm. That's all we know. So if you're like, waving your fist angrily at the screen in front of you, put it down, calm down.
Yeah.
We don't
Talk
know.
about the Majestic. Talk about the Majestic.
We will talk about the Bomb Majestic later.
Yeah, that's going to be in our pitch and predictions recap, probably.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't feel like we get enough hate mail.
True.
Because right now we're getting basically 0.
Yeah.
Because we're so small.
It's like 100% likes on all of our YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Let's get some dislikes in there.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Please don't actually do that. So we're picking cards from Uprising today, and I feel like Uprising is a little bit special, at least for me, because I remember signing up for Uprising pre-release, and it was like the first, I might have gone to an armory before Uprising pre-release, maybe. I think it was like at least one of the first Flesh and Blood events I ever went to, was going to Uprising pre-release, pulling my first ever legendary. I got a Coronet Peak.
Bitch.
Yeah. My first ever event was an Uprising draft that you hosted at your place, Fuzzy. It was, I remember you guys invited me over and you were like, learn to play with these starter decks. And I hated them. And you were like, okay, but you can get your own cards and play a different hero by doing this draft. And I really need an 8th, Clark. And I'm like, okay.
We looked at me.
And I remember sitting across from Fuzzy as he pulled the Coronet Peak. And that's where I first met Fuzzy.
Yeah. It's that new player luck, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was like, you bastard.
They got to do that specifically to hook you. You know?
It's real. It really is real.
So, Joel, what card did you pick from the Uprising set to talk about?
Oh, actually, I realize I'm a little bit on the nose about this one because I chose the card Uprising.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Boo, fuck that guy.
But, like, what card from Uprising?
Uprising.
Yeah, but like what card from? You have to pick one card. You can't pick the whole set.
Joel fucking hates this bit.
When is this bit over? Just so I can.
Now the bit is over. Now
okay.
I already meta referenced that it's a bit.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So I chose Uprising. I wanted to look at Uprising a little bit closer because it was a really underutilized card in the set that it came out. And I think with Syndra and Fang, it's going to function a little bit better, assuming like we get more cards to enable those wider chain links. And listeners, if you've never seen Uprising, I wouldn't blame you. Uprising says it's a 3-block, red pitch, 0-cost non-attack action card that says your next 4 draconic attacks this turn gain +1 with Go Again. So what this essentially equates to is another 0 for 4. But I wanted to look at it a bit more closely because it's a card that Phi, who's known for wide chain links, didn't really use to great effect. And I think it's going to be a little bit different for Fang and Syndra. And I think Phi really struggled to use this card because, number one, it didn't count itself as a chain link. And ending your turn on the 4th chain link, like with a Rupture card, for instance, was a lot easier than ending a chain link on your 5th or 6th card. So the chances that this was getting more value than any one of your other attacks was pretty low. And especially as Phi added more generics in the deck. Like, he was obviously Art of War, Belittle, Minnowism deck with Kodachis and like fucking Double Strike.
Yeah.
There's a lot of iterations, but for the most part, very much a generic deck, like generic Ninja aggro deck.
It was very interesting because Phi was the first Blitz deck I ever made, and I really liked Uprising because it was a cheap power card I could buy back when I didn't really have the money to spend stuff on like Double Strike, Mask of Momentum, Tiger Strike. So like those cards were just that build was unavailable to me. So Uprising was my power card, but as a power card, it really asks that you draw a nice hand that lets you go 4 wide. Otherwise, it really is just being another head jab. It had the exact same issue that Mordred Tide had for Viscerai back in the day. Like, it's good, it's an enabler, it helps, but it's very rarely actually getting that power card value that you expect.
And that's an interesting comparison, too, because Uprising caps out at giving you 4 points of value. Mordred Tide can go a lot higher than that.
Yeah, but
especially nowadays.
But back then it definitely didn't, right? And I feel like actually, if anything, Uprising was a way that they sort of like future-proofed their kind of design by limiting it to 4.
Definitely.
Because it could have easily said all Draconic attacks gain +1.
Yeah, and then we'd be in the same position we are now, but this card's banned alongside Art of War.
Yeah.
For Fang specifically, 3 chain links seems kind of hard, or like 3+. Like, every weapon swing with his daggers requires another Draconic card as a reaction, or a reaction that can be made Draconic via fealty tokens. So you really need a wide hand to get more than 2 dagger swings. And so the power fantasy of like swinging, 3 or 4 times a turn with Uprising, you get more out of those swings if you're able to do so, is why I was so interested by it. And on the flip side with Syndra, especially since her daggers have natural go again, and it seems like she's going to be flicking her daggers and recurring them in the same turn, possibly to attack 3 or 4 times, similar to Fang, she can kind of get the same value or more with Uprising more consistently, which is why I think it's going to make a comeback for the Hunted season.
Yeah, with that and Spreading Flames, it feels like Syndra has access to like 2 conceivable anthems by having her 2 daggers. I guess the question is really like, how reliable is it going to be for her to have her daggers up? And how reliable is she going to be able to align those turns with this, right? Because you still need 4 chain links with this. So you're still asking for a 3-card hand, even if one of those cards turns your daggers into 2 chain links.
Yeah. And the issue with both Fang and Syndra is they can't really have off turns or like completely dead turns. They always need to have at least 1 Draconic card or create a fealty token to keep this like mass of tokens around. And I think Uprising, just it being like a starter that doesn't really care about the rest of your hand, like it turns on a lot of the old Uprising cards that care about playing other red cards, like Blaze Headlong, for instance.
Yeah.
Just being able to, even if you're only able to throw your weapons or maybe a weak attack, you keep your fealty tokens around is a bonus, especially because all of Syndra's cards that have been revealed so far care about being Draconic, but they're not Draconic themselves. So it seems like there's going to be more work involved to have the same amount of Draconic chain links that Phi had.
Yeah, Syndra might end up in a very similar space as Phi, where they're a little bit heavier on the ninja side. And so once again, that restricts the ability to have the 4 Draconic chain links. But at the same time, the fealty token synergy means that maybe it is still possible that even with the heavy ninja build or a heavier ninja presence in the deck list, that they're still able to get the 4 chain links wide, all Draconic, that would give this the best value.
Right, especially considering that Syndra does not care about a threshold of fealty tokens in the same way Fang does. So when she has 3 fealty tokens, she can use 3 fealty tokens versus like I need 4 and 5 to use them with Fang. So it just seems like a much easier card to include in Syndra than it does Fang so far.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that.
Now, does fealty token make the card draconic, or does it make the attack draconic?
The card. It's the next
It
card
makes
you
the
play.
card draconic?
That's why it works with Fang.
So do you think that works with double strike? Like, do you think you could play double strike, banish double strike, play double strike again? And because it's the same double strike, right?
It does banish itself. I don't really know how it works with like last known information. You're the judge, so I don't know.
I would imagine it doesn't, because once it banishes itself, it's considered a new card.
That makes a lot of sense.
And last note about Uprising, like I know for the most part it's probably like a lore building card. It's kind of like it's literally named Uprising. Like I think it tells a lot of the story more so than it's supposed to be like a good card. That's probably why they limited it to 4, because they don't want to like have the namesake card be banned or whatever. But I still think like, especially now that they're reiterating a lot of what makes draconic, like it's going to be much more playable, hopefully, in the Hunted.
You know, one thing about this card is I forgot it blocked for 3. You know, like when you're looking at your 0 for 4s, one out of 0 for 4 that happens to also block for 3. That's going to be a little bit hard to come by, you know, because this card does not cost you any action points.
In talented aggro decks, we know how hard that is to come by, because like Aurora, her deck lists are currently struggling with that, right? Of being able to block super efficiently.
Yeah, true. And then the other card I want to talk about did not come out in Uprising, but I think it's been a namestay in at least Dromai when she was around. Tome of Imperial Flame. And obviously, like, this card was spiking initially and had a lot of hype surrounding it because it's royal and it's a royal set. And honestly, I think the hype is real. Like, it looks very, very strong in these 2 new draconic heroes.
Yeah. If we think about the power cards coming from Uprising into the new set, it was like Tome of Firebrand and Uprising.
Yeah.
Tome of Firebrand got banned, and so people sort of looked at this card, especially the moment that we learned Syndra and Fang were both naturally royal heroes. Everyone goes, well, what about the card that says royal printed on it? Is that going to be good?
Yep. So it is $70 for a reason.
So this card wasn't printed in Uprising.
No. Oh, that's the disclaimer, is that it was not printed in Uprising, but I think it's relevant enough because the heroes from Uprising might benefit from it. Tome of Imperial Flame is a no-block draconic non-attack action that costs 0, and it's a red pitch, excuse me. And it says draw a card. If you're royal, draw 2 cards instead. You may pitch 2 red cards, and if you don't, you banish your hand. And you also gain resources for each card pitched this way. So it's basically filtering 2 cards, you get 2 resources, and it has go again. So again, this is a not a link per se, but it is a draconic starter. And the reason why I think it's relevant is because as a draconic hero, especially if you're royal, it seems like while you're building fealty tokens, you don't want to be on the back foot. Otherwise, you're risking losing the tokens you built up thus far. And in that way, you can't really capitalize on no card or 1 card hands as easily. However, Tome of Imperial Flame kind of solves that problem because, like I said earlier, you filter and gain resources, and on larger hands, it's great because you filter away the shitty cards and you use the rest of the cards to be aggressive. If you want to be getting like the full value from 3+ dagger swings from each of the heroes, whether it be like redundant attack actions or attack reactions that you can't use, it's a good way to just completely fix your hand and get the resources for those cards. And
I could definitely see Syndra using this alongside Flamescale Furnace. Because, you know, Flamescale Furnace, it's basically a blue, right?
Right.
You just got 2 resources. You pay 1 into the Flamescale. Flamescale gives you 2 back. You end up with 3 floating, you know? And being able to, like, play the Tome and then have 3 resources after it. So you're literally, like, pitching a blue and then also getting the filtering of drawing 2 cards and pitching your 2 worst reds. It feels like it could be pretty powerful. Not, like, crazy powerful in the same way that, like, Dromai got 2 Ash out of the equation, right? She was, like, abusing this card. It was, like, made for her. But I feel like there could be a lot of value gained from Syndra, you know, kind of depending on how important is it for you to get that filtering. Probably not that important because aggro decks typically are just playing the same things over and over again.
Right.
It's also a matter of how many reds are they allowed to run, right? How deeply does Syndra feel like she needs to invest in blues? How deeply does Fang feel like he needs to invest in blues or yellows? Because at the end of the day, Fang could be conceivably pitchless, right? I mean, like, his ability is literally making the weapons cost nothing, and then you just run a bunch of zero-cost attack reactions. Tome of the Imperial Flame, to me, feels the most viable when Fang has 3 fealty out, and he is in that, I do not need to pitch anything, I get to convert my entire hand into offense. Let me play this Tome of Imperial Flame and find the best offensive hand.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential in the way that, depending on the way Fang wants to be aggressive. Like, if he has a ton of, like, 0-cost +3s or whatever, I think we're gaming. Otherwise, he might be cursed to play a non-zero amount of blues. Because, Dromai had completely 0 blues. Maybe 3 for, like, passing Mirage in certain matchups. But Warrior consistently, especially with like dual wielding swords, like you need those blues to pay for a Blade Runner historically. But I think all that's going to change, like you said, Clark, in the Hunted.
Yeah.
And it depends how much disruption there is, Like, I'll talk a little bit later about how there's ice in the meta. If you go up against a Jarl, you don't want to lose to Jarl just because you didn't put blues in your deck, you know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Or other forms of disruption.
Yeah, notably, Tome of Imperial Flame was really hitting its peak in terms of its impact on the meta after all the ice heroes had rotated out.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's not something to scoff at. And I think that it's possible that this card wouldn't have even made waves then if we still had an Ice Alexi or an Icelander floating around.
Yeah, true. So those are the 2 cards I wanted to talk about. Just some things that I'm going to be tinkering with Fang, because I think he has a lot of explosive potential, and depending on what cards come out, he could be really gassed, because Draconic Warrior is a new field, is a new design space, and there's just a lot of work to be done for Warrior in general. But now I want to hear from you, Clark, about your Rupture cards and how that might affect some of these heroes. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so for Yellow Pitch, I wanted to talk about a card that was pretty much unseen of in Uprising, but I think it's an interesting card to look at and do a deep dive on. So rather than like looking at a card that I think is going to be relevant, which is what you did, Joel, I want to talk about a card that I think can give us a lot of insight as to where LSS was looking at Draconic in Uprising and comparing that to sort of where they are now with Hunted. And I want to talk about Breaking Point. So Breaking Point, if you haven't seen it, and once again, we do not blame you. This card was not really played. It is a 1/5 red 3-block. It is an attack action, a Draconic attack action, that says Rupture. If this is played on Chain Link 4 or higher, it gains, on hit, destroy all cards in target player's arsenal?
All cards in the arsenal.
I was doing this from memory. So, Rupture as a mechanic is pretty fascinating to me, because it's essentially all Draconic was built around back in the day. The idea is you want to use your dragons and your Phoenix Flames and your weapon attacks to create these long chain links and then end on a nice big finisher card. And the finisher card can do a bunch of damage and really punish your opponent, right? So there were a lot of these. Breaking Point was just one of them. It was a common, and notably, this was a talented card that is also a 3-block. And is on rate. This card is pretty decent. I feel particularly interested by the fact that it's a 3-block. Because as we've seen in Tales of Aria, in Uprising, and even now in Rosetta, whenever they seem to do these talented sets, they don't like making the talented cards block for 3 very often.
I think like it also depends on the talent. I think Draconic gets a little bit of a pass because it all depends on what you're doing with it, Like for ice cards or earth cards, you did not have, or lightning cards, I guess to a much lesser extent, you did not have to play the card in order for you to get extra jazz from the card, Like Oldham was literally just playing blue ice cards in order to fuel Channel Lake Frigid or his hero ability, right? None of that has to do with the way that the card is played. So if the card is going to like be just as good on defense with blocking and when pitching, and it's enabling extra effects in the meantime, you are going to have to balance it some other way, right? And with the talented cards, they were like, if it's going to be a 3-block, it's not going to have any effects. That was kind of the rule. And I think they broke that with some Majestics as well, you know, like Majestics kind of cheat.
Yeah, Majestics are intended to, right? Because you can only run 3 of them. They're color locked. They're supposed to be the power card.
I think with Draconic, they recognize that, like, we're not fusing with Draconic. We're not revealing Draconic cards from our hand in order to, like, get any extra benefits. We're not flipping them from our arsenal. So if Draconic Talent doesn't do anything unless it's played, then it's okay to make one with no go again a 3-block. I think that's kind of what their metric is.
At least maybe it was back then. I think we've seen since then they've moved away from that. I would say just look at things like the recent set of Mystic Attacks that are costed 0 at Droplet all the way up through 3, where if you've played another blue card, they end up going to red rates of attack. Right?
I think that's fair. I think you're right that this card does fit, like, it could have easily been a 2-block and we wouldn't have batted an eye, you know?
Yeah.
It also, I think what you just said, Clark, with the whole Droplet series is a lot of cards, at least in the past year, have been sort of dumbed down to 2-blocks, mostly for the limited environment.
Yes.
I think a lot of their focus has been on, like, you can't have like 30 card, 40 card pile with 3 blocks. And so a card like this, where it's in a little bit of an older set, maybe that would have been a 2-block if it was printed today. But I think it's going to be a really good tool in this upcoming set, because 4 chain links is going to be like so easy to pull off, having that effect. Plus the 3 blocks is going to be super solid.
Yeah. But I don't think we're going to see it in the new set, right? Because instead, we have seen 3 cards that have taken effects from other Rupture cards, from Uprising, and are doing them better with an easier to accomplish quest. Now, admittedly, these are not Draconic cards. They are base ninja cards, the Art of the Dragon series.
Okay, well, hold on. I don't know that I would call turning a card Draconic an easier quest than having 4 chain links. And that's very dependent on the fact that we haven't seen a lot of the set at the time we're making this video.
Yeah.
It really depends how easy marked is, right?
Well, I mean, just being completely upfront, Fuzzy, Brand with Cinderclaw.
Yeah, Brand with Cinderclaw like does make it really easy. But Brand with Cinderclaw also makes it easy to get 4 chain links.
I don't know. Like, everyone's talked about... So let's talk about the Art of the Dragon. So in the Hunted, we have seen that they have printed 3 new cards that I think have an easier quest to turn on the effects, but they're the exact same effects as these Rupture cards. It is the Art of the Dragon. There are 3 of them that I'm specifically talking about. It's Claw, Fire, and Scale. Each of them have an effect of one of the Rupture cards from Uprising. So Art of the Dragon Claw is the one that is the parallel to Breaking Point. It is ninja rather than just Draconic, but it also is a 1 for 5 attack. It also blocks for 3, but if it is made Draconic, then it gains the effect, which is different than on Rupture. It gains this effect. And I think this is powerful for a very notable reason, which is that I don't really like Arsenal Disruption at the end of a really, really long chain a lot of the time, especially going against an aggro deck, which I know feels weird because we've all played against the Zen that's gone like little attack, weapon, CNC, and you're like, oh my god, I blocked too much at the beginning of the chain link. I'm getting fucked by this CNC. But at the exact same time, it's also so easy to get blown out by a D-React.
Yeah.
Like, when it's CNC, you can't get blown out by that D-React. But with these cards, it's so easy to get blown out by a D-React.
Are you saying it's balanced?
I'm saying that I prefer... So this is the point that I'm getting to. Putting Arsenal Disruption at the end of a really long chain means that players are encouraged to sort of use that D-React in Arsenal early on in the attack, and you completely lose the value of this Rupture card.
Okay.
And whenever you're playing around Rupture, you are typically taking damage or taking some detrimental effect to be able to pull off the long chain link and get this effect. When you compare that to the ability to play it on really lean, like 2-card hands, like, if I just go Brand with Cinderclaw, find all's this, I am feeling godlike, right? Like, okay, they still throw the D-React at me. I still got blown out, but I'm still feeling good because I presented a 2-card 8.
Yeah.
And, like, that effect still threatens something. It made them use that D-React now on this 5-power attack that isn't really doing anything else versus maybe on a later turn where I really want a 0 for 4 to hit.
Yeah. And I also love how we're sprinkling Arsenal Disruption into all classes rather than making it dependent on CNC, you know? Like, that's part of why CNC, Command & Conquer, is so prevalent in the Flesh and Blood meta and has been for so long. Because Arsenal Disruption, kill your Arsenal, is good, you know? And I hope that we can get to a day where we're not so reliant on Command & Conquer. But it has a really important place in our game, and that place becomes less important the more cards there are in the game that destroy Arsenal, you know?
Very much so, yeah. But there's definitely enough shifts happening here that I think it's interesting, right? Because clearly they want this effect present, not just in the limited format, but present in this class talent combo.
Yeah.
They want this effect here, and they said they looked at Breaking Point and they looked at why people weren't running Breaking Point and decided to make these specific shifts into this card. And similarly, they did that for the other two as well. Art of the Dragon Fire is just fucking nutso when you compare it to the Uprising counterpart. The Uprising counterpart is Searing Touch, which is a 1/4/3 that on Rupture deals 2 damage to any target. And Art of the Dragon Fire is a 1/5 that, if you can turn Draconic, deals 2 damage. A 1/7 at rare?
Sheesh. Chase the tails of Majestic.
Chase the tail as go again.
This is
true, bestie.
This is also direct damage, like unstoppable. Hopefully they print some prevention effects.
Card looks good.
Surely.
They're prevention effects, right, audience?
Reckless Swing, except I'm attacking?
Nutso. I mean, also just for me, I'm just imagining the 1-card turn of, well, I'm going to lose my fealty anyway. Might as well just throw 7 at you by destroying this fealty.
Yeah.
Find all's 1-card 7. Nutso.
Yeah.
Nutso world.
Yep.
So, like, there's some stuff happening here that, like, I'm really wondering why did they feel like they felt this necessary? Like, because the quest feels easier to me because of Brand with Cinderclaw and fealty tokens. Again, it's all dependent. But these could have been 4-power, right?
Yeah.
These could have been 2 blocks, right? A lot of ninja attacks are 2 blocks. Don't get right, Fuzzy? Back me up on that?
Yeah.
It's like the starters are, but the combo cards are 3 blocks.
If it naturally has go again, it's gonna have block for 2. Yeah.
Okay. And this doesn't have go again, so it gets the block for 3. That's in line with Ninja's design.
I also am wondering, like, and this is me taking a shot at the dark. Spoilers might prove me completely wrong.
Sure.
But because Draconic Ninja can make other things draconic by way of Brand of Cinderclaw, LSS probably assumes we're going to run 6, at least 6 up to 9 of this card. Maybe the quest to mark and get fealty tokens is a bit harder in Syndra for that reason. We don't know yet.
Hopefully.
I really doubt that LSS would make it asymmetrical like that, but there are more ways to make things draconic currently in Ninja, so maybe they're making it a little bit harder, and that's why these cards seem a little pushed at rare. That could be my only guess, really.
Yeah. Because I mean, mainly just the fact that, like, it can be just that efficient off of, like, a fealty token makes it really scary in my eyes. I think it's a big card to keep your eye on. Art of the Dragon Fire. And just sort of as a closing point for this pitch, I kind of want to bring up the last of the Art of the Dragon cards and its contemporary in Uprising. So in Uprising, we got Liquefy, which has the same effect as Art of the Dragon Scale, which is when this hits a hero, put a -1 counter on an equipment they control, and then if that equipment has 0, destroy it. Now, Liquefy is a reaction that costs 1. That needs to be put on the 4th chain link. That's kind of a big ask, right?
It also gives it an on hit. You're not even guaranteed the equipment destruction.
Yeah, and it doesn't give any extra power either. So, like, it's really, really hard to pull off Liquefy. I don't think... I've seen Uprising in a few lists, right? I've seen Breaking Points played in Limited. I don't think I've ever seen anyone ever run this card.
It's like in 2022, 2023, they were like, we want to be really careful and judicious about destroying other people's tunics.
Yeah.
And now in 2025, they're like, kill the tunic.
Yeah, they're like, we power crept equipment, so now we're printing more shit to deal with equipment.
They printed a whole hero to counter equipment.
Oh, yeah.
So now I think they're going to be a bit more liberal with like how we interact with armor in this game for sure.
Definitely, which I love personally. And I think moving it from the power of the reaction step to an attack action, 2 block to 3 block, and putting it on the attack, right? The 1 for 5. Once again, the slightly easier quest in my mind, in my opinion. I think it's going to be really interesting to see if that sees any particular play, because I think it's a little bit different, right? Because remember what I was saying about Arsenal Disruption? Of like, maybe they just don't have an arsenal, maybe they have the D-React in arsenal. They're always going to have an equipment, baby. You're always going to find, like, if you do the big long chain link and you throw this at the end of it, it's going to be doing a lot more.
Yeah.
And even on leaner turns, again, you are demanding cards, because if that hits, it can completely ruin a person's turn or even game.
Yeah. Because, we're seeing a lot of like really key pieces of equipment that people want to hang on to. Tunic for one, obviously like Traverse for the Mystic Heroes, like maybe they haven't transcended yet and you're threatening this.
I mean, notably, it has
twice.
to be a 1 block. It has to be on 1 block. Because it can only give a single -1 block counter, and then if it has 0, destroy it.
Oh, I see. Got it.
So the 2 block blade breaks are safe for now.
You could destroy Pouncing Paws.
No!
Yeah.
I don't even have a cold foil yet. What do you mean?
Yeah. So those were the 3 cards and their parallels that I wanted to talk about. Sort of draw attention to where we saw these similar effects, but how they were printed in different ways between the 2 sets, and hopefully we see some other cards that sort of evolve Draconic and what a Draconic is trying to do, because I think it's really interesting.
Got it. So Joel cheated by choosing a card that wasn't actually from Uprising. You cheated by choosing a whole suite of cards from Uprising that are also a whole suite of cards in the Hunted.
I mean, what can I say? I mean,
I'm going to cheat in Blue Pitch by picking a card that doesn't directly relate to anything in the Hunted, but instead the Hunted meta that we're going to be going into.
You can't trust these fucking podcasters, man.
it's like we set up the premise of the episode and then we just like slapped it out of our own hands. Not in my house. You're in your own house.
Why didn't they just do what they said or said what they do?
If we had commenters, they'd be like, why did they say this and then not even talk about it?
Firstly, Arctic Incarceration. Let's talk about Arctic Incarceration. So I really just chose this card as a representative for ice, It does the most straightforward ice thing. I'll read you Arctic Incarceration. Arctic Incarceration is a common, Uprising 144 through 146. The red pitch, sorry.
So specific. Here's the
set code? You fucking nerd.
It's an ice non-attack action that blocks for 2. The red Arctic Incarceration creates 3 frostbites under target hero's control. All the way to the blue Arctic Incarceration will only make 1 frostbite. Who knows what the yellow one does? Not really relevant. No one ever played that one. I don't need to know what the yellow one does.
That's so
No, but people did play the yellow one in Limited. That's why you like Limited.
Oh, yeah, Limited. Yeah. They made 2 frostbites in Limited. Not sure what it did in CC.
Did nothing in CC because it went man in CC.
And I feel like Arctic Incarceration has 2 kind of modes. You're either like playing the red one and giving someone like the closest thing you have to a shit ton of frostbites. Because 3 frostbites is basically an entire card out of your hand that they have to pitch if they have a blue. If they don't have a blue, then they're really mad at you for playing red Arctic Incarceration.
I don't see it in your notes, so I'm also going to bring up that Lexi could also flip it with their hero ability.
Oh, yeah.
Give 1 frostbite and then give them 3 more. So that's a blue plus another card.
It's definitely something I wanted to talk about with this pitch, where with all ice cards, especially the ones who use them to like great effect, Like, think of Lexi with Arctic Incarceration. She did this all the time, but especially Icelander. Playing these ice cards got you extra value on top of it. So Arctic Incarceration was spending your entire action point. You're saying no more aggression for this turn, and I'm going to make some frostbites and probably put a little bit of extra value on top. Lexi could flip it to give you an extra frostbite, so you could give 4 frostbites with 1 card. And at that point, the parity becomes like a little bit more skewed towards more value that your opponent has to give you or overcome compared to the value that you get from the card itself,
And also similarly, I just want to point out, Jarl also, in a similar vein to Lexi, can play it and create an extra frostbite, provided the opponent has an empty equipment.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what makes the ice cards seem a little bit, I don't want to say unbalanced yet, but when you're looking at the face value of Arctic Incarceration, it's card for card. I play a card, you have to pitch a card. And it almost feels a little bit skewed for the opponent's favor, because if I'm pitching a card and you're playing a card, then I'm going to win on fatigue, So you're giving me cards to do this defensive maneuver, to do this disruption. But if I have enough blues to compensate, then you're actually going to lose in the long run, because you can't just play cards like this and expect to win eventually,
Yeah, but it puts a pressure on the blues in their hand, right?
Yeah.
So, something that I've learned a lot playing Viscerai is what makes Rune Chant strong is the fact that you have to give me the blues, which you want to keep to attack me back.
Ice, more than any other class or talent, in my opinion, okay, except for maybe Wizard, it fights you at a deck building basis. Normally, if I put blues in my deck, I have a plan for them. I picked a number of blues to go in because I want to draw exactly this many in order to make my game plan work, Maybe I only wanted to draw 1 blue per turn, and I wanted to pitch that blue for my 3 reds. But Icelander is you're going to have to give me a little bit more than that. You're going to hope you have the wrong number of blues in order to have it become the right number. And that's a deck building question that you have to have an answer to. And I hated it.
Yeah, that was rough.
I feel like I flunked that test every time.
Yeah. And sort of hearkening to what Joel was saying in his red pitch with Tome of Imperial Flame, right? If there's any ice in this meta, a red line list that's trying to generate Rune Chant through playing a card, you're never going to get the chance.
Yeah.
Because those frostbites are going to stop you from ever generating them.
Yeah, while we're in flashback mode, I played Briar at the time that Icelander was popular, and I'm playing 0 cost cards, right? I wanted my cards to cost 0. I didn't want my cards to cost an extra 1 or 2 or 3.
Plus, you got to pitch your Earth Blues to keep Channel Mount Heroic.
Yeah, that's synergy, baby.
I guess a little bit of a question I have for you guys is do you think that what's the worst number of frostbites to get? Obviously more frostbites is worse, right? But which frostbite do you think slows you down the most? Is it the first one, the second one, the third one?
The second one really pisses me off.
Yeah, 1 frostbite sometimes it feels like I can deal with it.
I'm like, you silly bitch. I'll pay for it. 2? Oh, God.
Yeah, because with 1 frostbite, you can still blue into CNC. Right? And that's I'm still playing Flesh and Blood. But once it's 2 frostbites, then what are you doing? Pitching a blue to play a 1 cost, and that feels a little bit more even? Or you're going to have to somehow do the math to spread that cost out across 2 blues into a really complex hand.
Yeah.
And then you're not blocking at all, right?
Yeah. I mean, 4 is the worst, right?
Oh my God, 4?
4 is you got it. You got my turn. Thank you.
Yeah.
At that point, it's just way more worth for your cards just to block. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, I guess it's also so matchup dependent.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a Guardian and you give me 4 blues, I go cool. Or 4 frostbites, I go cool. I'm going to pitch my red next to 2 blues. And I'm going to throw Anathos for 6 and yes, you took away my crippling turn, my dominated crippling turn. That sucks. But I just got to put it at the bottom of my deck, and we're getting there, baby. And we know we're getting there.
Yeah.
and you just let me pitch stack that.
That's true.
which is almost kind of nice when you have that many frostbite. But when it's just 1 frostbite, you're bitch, I wanted to dominate crippling you, and now I can't.
Yeah.
Do you think at the time that Arctic Incarceration was printed, it was a measured print by LSS? Because ice is the hardest control that we've gotten, right? Arctic Incarceration is a control card, right? You cannot push aggression with Arctic unless maybe you have like Frost Hex from Icelander.
Or your Lexi. And you just get to do all this aggro and then play it.
Well, even if you're playing it, right, it's to cover your aggression, to stop them from fighting back. It's still controlling what the opponent can do in order to make sure your game plan works. Do you feel like this is a conservative design from LSS? Do you think like they thought that 3 Frostbites was going to be like really good? Do you think like...
I think they knew it was going to be good. I think they just saw it as like, well, this takes to their action point.
The way that I'm looking at it is it's the parallel of this card versus Winter's Bite, which is the same rate. Like it's a 0 cost, non-attack action, but this one has Go Again, and it instead of giving Frostbites, it taxes. So at blue, it taxes for 1 resource or discard a card. Yellow is 2, and then red is 3. So that's demanding an entire card as well.
Yeah.
But I think the Frostbites, because it's your only action. Like whenever your opponent has 1 card, you're kind of like, okay, what can they possibly do? Are they just arsenaling a D-react? Oh, it's Arctic Incarceration. I kind of have to like deal with that now, and I don't really have agency. Winter's Bite is also really impactful because you can do it at the start of a turn with the rest of my cards in hand, and now I have to like do a lot of planning ahead of time. So Arctic Incarceration seems like the least annoying of the cards, but like more definitive, whereas Frostbite is like there's a lot more skills expression in how you use it.
Winter's Bite?
What did I say?
Frostbite.
Yeah, Winter's Bite, sorry.
I think that Arctic Incarceration is 100% more powerful. That's why it doesn't have Go Again, right?
Yeah.
Because they can see that, like, yes, there is a world where Arctic Incarceration, just like Winter's Bite, only takes 3 resources. Whether that's 3 resources now or 3 resources when they try to play their first card. It doesn't matter because it's just another blue, right? It says, have a blue in hand. Whereas Arctic Incarceration, unlike Winter's Bite, has the ability to stop the opponent from ever playing any of their cards because they do not have that blue. Or the player can choose to retain their blue and get rid of one of the reds they were going to play and maybe instead swing their weapon or dump that into a Grasp of the Arcanite, right? That distinct difference of like sometimes literally just full stopping their turn, I think makes a difference between whether or not it had Go Again or not. And, I'm not sure because, like you said, it doesn't create any real proactive value. It doesn't generate anything to further their game plan of winning. It just gives tempo.
Yeah.
So, again, part of the reason why I chose this card for my pitch today, Arctic Incarceration, is that Ice is going to be coming back into the meta. Actually, it's already here. We've gotten a new Armory deck Jarl, and this new season might be his chance to shine because Draconic heroes, especially if they're trying to play only reds, are going to be really weak to disruption in the form of resource taxing, that these Frostbites might be like really good ways of catching a Fang or a Syndra off guard, and we could maybe see Jarl get a little bit more presence in the meta. I do kind of think he's a little bit held back right now because he has a really bad matchup into Illusionists, you know?
Well, you see, that's actually interesting, Fuzzy, because he just has a bad matchup into Enigma. His Prism matchup is apparently fantastic.
Wow.
Because Prism no longer has the ability to use Tome of Divinity to, like, vomit a bunch of auras onto the field and, like, take over from there. So it's actually just Enigma and New. Because I think a lot of Guardians really hate the fact that, like, New exists. And she can steal their good, powerful blues, which has always been an inherent strength of the Guardian class.
But even with him being held back, I think we should be prepared for him to be a part of the meta. Yes. And I think Jarl could be a great way for us to see what LSS thinks the future of Ice design should look like.
Yeah. Right now, every aggro player is just Squidward in the Chrome, in that Chrome world. Just future.
Because I think we've heard statements from LSS that basically they thought that Ice was a little bit toxic, where the Frostbites were able to get too much value out of controlling your opponent, and they were looking for ways that they can do Ice differently in the future. And sort of like loosely, we all kind of agree that Spectra wasn't a good design, and they're going to move away from that, but to a much lesser extent. And I think I actually like where they landed with Jarl, where you have to do some kind of quest, maybe something that your opponent was going to do anyway, but you're telling your opponent, hey, like, I have to do these things before I can really get my ice value out, get these frostbites going, and I can still get like some of them. But it's not like Icelander, where she was able to play a blue Arctic Incarceration and give you 2 frostbites without even spending an action point, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Just for arsenaling or 2, right?
Yeah.
Like, which was the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
Or like Lexi, who could give you 4 frostbites off of 1 red Arctic Incarceration, you know? Jarl can still do that if you have an empty equipment zone, and he can't do it much more than like once or twice per turn.
Yeah, and I know this pitch is not about Jarl, but I love that
It is.
playing into Jarl is like there's this sort of mini game, especially with him. It's like, okay, I need to be really conservative about my armor blocks. Can't be willy-nilly just because it's a Guardian, because as soon as I do, I turn on his hero ability.
Yeah.
So that agency that it gives players or opponents of the Ice Hero is such a unique interaction, and it makes me like look back on their promise about frostbites not returning in the same way they've printed it in the past. And Jarl's a really good embodiment of that, because even though it's like still frostbites and in a zone, so it's technically different, there's also that extra layer of I need to make not bad decisions, but decisions in the game that result in me like leaving myself open to disruption.
Yeah, to look a little bit wider in terms of scope, right? We had Tales of Aria as the first set where Ice was introduced. And then we have Uprising, where we get the second set of Ice being introduced. Presumably, there's going to be a third set in the future where we're going to get Ice again, right? So we can really see the evolution of Ice as it's come by. And I think counterplay to Ice is one of the clearest things that they've decided needs to be more present, right?
Yeah.
Icelander simply did not feel like she had the counterplay. Not only did you have to play into her wizard, and that had to change everything that you were doing, you also had to play into Ice, and that was changing everything that you were doing.
Yeah.
And simply saying run 8 more blues because wizard, arcane barrier, and Ice, it didn't make enough of a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, I think, really, really interesting the next time that we see Ice. I'm also really just talking, because this whole pitch was supposed to be about Uprising, right? It was weird that Ice was in Uprising.
Yeah.
Like thematically?
Yeah.
Yeah, technically, like
Icelander just in the lore got sort of teleported there because a big tree said so.
oh, okay. I was about to give you a lore explanation, but even that was more than I know.
Yeah, she went to a big tree and the tree was like, you need to be in Volcor. And then she was like, what the fuck?
I kind of liked the ice and fire like aesthetic of the set, you know?
Yeah.
If it was just like all fire all the time, I probably would have gotten bored quickly. Even as is, like, I don't think there's enough aesthetically going on in Uprising. I wish there was more, you know? Because
Yes.
like over half the set is this like fire motif, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's one of the reasons why, they went to Chaos and Assassin here in The Hunted. Like, I think because they recognize that Volcor is a very large place that they've decided to not give a lot of, or at least not too much diversity to, at least as we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clark, I would agree. Like, I am really excited to see like what happens when we see Ice for the third time. I don't like, I'll outright hate the talent. I think it has a cool place and it's fun to play with every once in a while. So I'm excited to see if it's going to be something where it feels healthy and a nice addition to the game, you know? All right, I think I'm ready to move on to our Arsenal zone.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. Wait, what's the Arsenal zone again?
Joel, thank you for asking. The Arsenal Zone is the part of our podcast where we talk about a card we love, a card we hate, a card we love to hate, or a card that just kind of fucking is there in our chaff pile. Let's start off with Fuzzy.
I have a card that's in my chaff pile. You personally were calling me out on that one, and I'm aiming to deliver.
I do it too.
We had a Tales of Aria draft at my house recently.
Oh, wait. This past Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You could have been there.
I thought you were talking about
You would have been
Invigorate.
our 8th.
Yeah, we literally needed an 8th butt.
Why didn't you say anything? I thought you got an 8th.
No, I never told you I got an 8th.
Bruh.
You said no, so we respected that.
Yeah,
Well, I assumed you would get 8 because you wanted a UPR draft.
I did want a UPF draft.
So you led with that. You're
If we had if we had 8, I would have pushed harder for
Oh
UPF
my
draft.
god. What's that called? A catch-22?
Yeah.
So anyway, I was drafting, and I drafted in a way. I've drafted Tales of Varia like a half dozen times, which is kind of a lot considering that it came out way before I started playing, you know? But the boxes are so cheap that I like to buy them for cheap and then draft them here, you know? It's like a cheap draft. It's great. I drafted a hero, Briar, and I drafted Briar in a way that I've never really drafted her before, where I really focused on the arcane damage, you know? I actually don't think I've been able to draft Briar in Tales of Aria at all, because usually Han takes every ball lightning. It's a thing. It's a thing. He takes every ball lightning and he cuts everyone out of ball lightning.
We stopped him this time, baby. I got 2 of the red ball lightnings.
I opened both of those ball lightnings and I passed them away from Han.
To me. And that's fine because I fed you back with the Sting of Sorcery.
Yeah, it was great.
Too.
We were colluding. Han literally at the end of the draft, he goes, "Where were all the ball lightnings?" It was great. But I'm drafting like this very like arcane centric build where I pack one, picked one to Flicker Wisp. You know, your arcane does extra. And then I started grabbing Inspire Lightnings.
Oh, that's so cool.
Inspire Lightning is the card that I'm shouting out today for Arsenal Zone. It is a 1-cost, non-attack, elemental Runeblade action. It has a 2 block, which becomes 3 if you got your Embodiment of Earth.
Flame.
It's got Lightning Fusion, and if you have fused, the red will deal 3 arcane damage to target hero.
It has to fuse to deal any damage, which makes the hardest lightning replacement that we got in the First Strike Aurora deck better.
What did you get? What was it like in the Aurora
That's
deck?
Lightning Flow.
Lightning-
Deal 3 arcane.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So in my draft, it was really fun. These were like unblockable damage. It's very similar to Rosetta draft where there's no arcane barrier running around. Mm-hmm. So this is just like 3 damage to the face. And if you can get enough of these going, then like if you play them on turn 0, 3 damage to the face. If you can get them near the end,
Damn.
they think they're safe because they have 3 life, 3 damage to the face.
So true.
Knock them out.
Yeah. That's how Fuzzy beat me.
So Inspire Lightning, thank you for making my last draft really spicy. I also went 3-0 that draft. And I was not really expecting that because I was looking at these arcane damage cards and I'm like, 1 for 3 damage? Go again?
Arcane damage in a set with no AV is pretty fucking good. Who'd have thunk it?
Pretty solid.
And I brought a copy for each of you to own. I will sign it and give it to you as my present because you are my fellow hosts and I like you.
Aw.
1 for you and 1 for you.
Thank you, Fuzzy. Okay. I think I'm up next. Yeah?
Sure.
For my card, I want to talk about Lightning Press.
Oh, God.
Oh,
yeah,
me
I've been
too.
thinking about Lightning Press a lot lately, for sure.
Yeah, so Aurora's fucking annoying, and Lightning Press is annoying.
It's crazy that she gets to have Lightning Press in every hand.
0 for 4?
Why am I
Do I
trying
have
to
it?
block you? Just give me the damage. Tell me how low my life needs to go.
we need to make a meme image of like Fuzzy declaring no blocks and Hans looking over his shoulder with the Lightning Press going, "Shh, he doesn't know."
Or he goes, and this is a secret tool we'll use for later.
Lightning Press is really, really strong, but I also kind of really dislike one element of its design, which is that everyone just plays it in the reaction step.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why is this an instant? It's an instant for synergy reasons, except there's also anti-synergy. At least when this was printed, there was no reason for this to be an instant, in my personal opinion, right? It made it horrible to Arsenal. Even if it was a reaction, it would have been horrible to Arsenal. But, like, it wasn't a good Arsenal target because, as Lexi, if you put it in Arsenal, you now no longer have an Arsenal slot to load an arrow into to then put this on top of. So, like, it's not good to, like, Arsenal. I guess it's good because you can fuse with it and then play it on that card, but then you're revealing it. So, like, you got rid of the instant nature of the card.
Yeah, and you could do all that with an attack reaction.
Yeah. So, like, it just bothered me so much that this was an instant. Obviously, now they have printed things like Flittering Charge and Blast to Oblivion, which now have this energy and do reward it for being an instant, even though you still just play it as an attack reaction 9 times out of 10. Like, could it be possibly used to, like, trigger Phantasm?
Yeah,
Yes.
it can.
Okay, so, like...
Which, like, should it be? Like,
Yeah.
why not just make it an attack reaction that like blocks for 2? Come on.
Well, I think also like the flavor of lightning being
Yeah, I
blast.
totally get that. And I was about to bring it up too. Lightning should be instants.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing in lightning should block. I agree.
Yeah. But it was a card that really, really bothered me for the longest time because I remember being like, oh, I can declare this after you pass on defense reactions. And then it's like, no, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, oh, then why the fuck is it instant?
Yeah, I have a lot of new players ask me that. They're like, so it's like an attack reaction? Well, how is it different? Child, let's pretend it's not for now.
Yeah. And then also just +3 is so awkward on the 0-for-4s from Aurora because you want to give the 0-for-4 block. Because if you give a 3 block and they're over by 1, they just won't play Lightning Press. They'll just be like, okay, take 1 and I get all my on hits.
Yeah.
But if you give them the 0-for-4 D react, then they're like, cool, Lightning Press on top of it. And you're like, oh my god, I don't have another D react to give to this. And it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck that card.
Lightning Press, annoying, good. I'm happy that they gave it more use cases for it to actually be an instant.
I couldn't even use it back when I was playing Briar because it's not an attack or a non-attack, and she's just like so greedy to do those other things.
Unless you're a thug and you use Entwine Lightning like a freak.
Yeah, I guess people were playing Lightning Press on Briar, and it was putting in some work. I didn't like it that much.
Right, that was my card. Cool. Jill, what about you?
So for my card, I just wanted to highlight the fact that Warrior finally got a 0-for-4 attack action card.
Let's go!
With Go Again.
Oh, wow.
Blaze Headlong. And you might recognize this because it was already printed in Uprising. Blaze Headlong is a 0-cost, 2-block, 4-power attack action. And it says if you played another red card, this gets Go Again. Which is like gas. It's better than every other Bolton card. And in terms of warrior attack reactions, pretty solid. And I think it's going to see a lot of good use cases in Fang because, especially with Long Whisker loyalty, Clark was saying that you need at least 3 chain links. And I was like, oh, it kind of does, huh? So this is a really good way of extending your turn without needing any other requirements to get Go Again. You just need to play red card and boom, you're good to go. So I'm really looking forward to playing this card, being more aggressive as a warrior, and whatever other equivalent we get in the Hunted that is specifically Draconic Warrior.
Yeah, it's going to be so cool to see if like if Fang can finally be the aggro warrior with Blaze Headlong.
Yeah. Like if you're adding Draconic to it, it's got to be pretty good, right?
I finally have my red 0-for-4. You guys had to fight so long to get your Blade Flurry. It's still conditional.
For real.
Yeah.
For real.
But now you have Blaze Headlong, baby.
Yeah.
You have your 0-for-4. Aurora gets 20 of them, but you got this one.
We're so back. We just need one and we'll take over the world.
Well, congrats, Joel.
Thanks. Yeah, that's my card. Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thank you guys for potting with me. And hype for the Hunted.
Oh, yeah. Remember, you can only get spoilers at Pitch It To Me
They
Podcast
already know all the
Discord.
spoilers. They've been on our Discord getting all the spoilers at our Discord.
But if you really want to talk with a community that probably cares a lot about card design, like I honestly think that we're one of the best Discords out there for that.
True. So true, bestie. All right. Until next one, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Pitch It To Me Podcast is hosted by Fuzzy Delp, Clark Moore, and Joel Recinos. Our executive producer is Talon Stradley. Logistics coordinator, John Farkas. Music by Dillon Hulse. Logo by Han V. And sound mixing by Christopher Moore. Last but not least, we'd like to thank you, the listener. Thank you for tuning in. Please give us a follow on your favorite social media platform at Pitch It To Me Podcast. Joel, thank you for asking. Too much. And Spinal Tap. Let's bring it to a 10.